Today, I'm super excited to, bring this interview with someone who I met recently in the Miami Sellers Conference, and I love the way he thinks, very analytical, and I think it brings a unique perspective on doing the Amazon game. His name is Gareth, and he's from All Out Amazon. So stay tuned. I'm going to learn how he is scaling his 7-figure business in this video today. Stay tuned. Okay guys, today I'm super excited to be introducing Gareth from All Out Amazon. And like I said earlier on, has got a very analytical mind. I saw him talk at the Miami Sellers Conference this year, and I was blown away by the way he thinks about Amazon and how he approaches it. Gareth, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today and taking time out of your busy schedule. If anyone doesn't know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about it and also introduce yourself?
Yeah, what's going on? Thanks for having me, of course. Yeah, it's we're both recovering, I think, from the whole Miami weekend. It was a good time, though. For anyone who wasn't aware of the Miami conference, go check it out. We're probably a lot of content being posted about that. But anyways, yeah, me. My name is Gareth. I've been selling on Amazon for just probably about 3 years, somewhere in that range. My come up story, my beginnings is probably pretty similar to a lot of you guys, right? This is, before COVID. I did the whole college thing, graduated college, had a 9-to-5 job, corporate job, and it was all right? It wasn't super good money. It was fine. It was, paying the bills, etc. At the time on the weekends, I was serving in a restaurant, right? The whole waiter sort of thing. And so that was my weekends. During the week, I would do the whole corporate gig, and that was kind of it, right? And then COVID came, right? COVID happened, shut down a lot of the restaurants, and so that kind of freed up my weekends. With that extra time, I'm not super good with extra time, right? I like to be busy, I like to be doing things. And so the first couple of weekends came and went, right? Where I didn't necessarily have anywhere to go, anything to do. And I was like, all right, well, this isn't going to work, right? Obviously, we didn't necessarily know what was going to happen with COVID. And so I started looking for things to do, right? And, obviously 2022, 23 times we just go to our phone, start doing, some digging, Instagram, TikTok, all those sorts of things. And at some point, in some form or fashion, I came across some sort of piece of content about this whole Amazon thing, right? Selling on Amazon. I don't remember exactly what piece of content, who posted it, etc. But it was along the lines of talking about the whole retail. Actually, it was books. It was used books, right? Going to Goodwills, thrift stores, etc. Buying a book for 90 cents and posting it and then selling it on Amazon for $15 or $20 or whatever that case may be, right? And obviously, someone who has no sort of exposure at the time to this whole sort of business, whole sort of world, that's interesting, right? So it didn't take long for me to start digging deeper, finding and scoping out more accounts to follow in terms of just learning and just getting exposed to this new thing that I kind of inadvertently stumbled across, right? Reezy's, Miles, Flips Miles, those are a couple of accounts that ring a bell back in the day. Ironically enough, Miles is one of my best friends now, fast forward 3-4 years. But anyways, at that time, this was, I think the thrift stores were not yet closed. So it was doable for me to watch these videos and go to Marshall's and just kind of start scanning books. Facebook Marketplace was also a thing, right, where people had books that they were giving away, all sorts of things, right? And so for the next couple weeks, next couple months, etc., I just started kind of scoping out this whole book thing, right? It didn't really get too much traction. Going to a Goodwill and kind of scanning things wasn't necessarily my cup of tea. I wasn't really doing it for me. However, I saw the value. I saw the business model. Obviously, it was working, right? I was making money, but at a smaller scale. But for me, if it was going to work, it would have to be on a bigger scale. I would have to be able to multiply the efforts and really make the processes more efficient. So that's why I continued to do more digging, right? From there, I started looking into this whole online arbitrage scene, right? So from books, used books, didn't last too long in that space, but then I went to OA, right? Online arbitrage. And that's a whole different world, right? Because that takes the whole concept of buying something at one price and selling it on Amazon with a different market, a different price, a different demand, and blows it out of the water, right? Because you can do a whole lot more things, as you guys probably are aware of. And so that's what got me hooked, right? That was the piece that kind of was like, all right, well, this is cool. I'm in. Now let's really double down on this concept and really try and see what we can do. And so at that point, right, that was all I needed. Double down on the process, right? Started to consume Keepa data anywhere I can consume it, anywhere I can learn it, YouTube, Instagram, etc. And just started to learn and conceptualize and really understand what was going on and how to start making these decisions, right? Because an online arbitrage business is only going to be as successful as the accuracy of your decisions, of the accuracy of your purchases, right? So if you don't understand what's going on the product data level, you have no chance of succeeding. And so that's where it starts. And that's where it started for me, is really getting fluent with the Keepa aspect, leveraging the past history of a product to make that futuristic decision as accurate as possible. Right. And so that's not something that came overnight. It came with weeks and months of trial and error. Lost a whole lot of money in the beginning by making too quicker purchases, but we learned, right? And we got better, and we developed different processes and strategies to A, analyze data more efficiently and effectively and more accurately, but B, start to uncover more products that we weren't necessarily were finding before. And so that's kind of how it started, and that's how it scaled. And fast forward 2.5, 3 years, here we are. We have multiple Amazon businesses in terms of, obviously, we sell on Amazon ourselves. We do some consulting and coaching on the side as well. We have a podcast and essentially made a living off of Amazon with the concept of buying at one price, finding these products wherever we can from either online arbitrage, wholesale, etc., and then listing and selling on Amazon and leveraging all of Amazon's customers and brand loyalty and trust and their logistical systems. And yeah, it's been great. Amazon's awesome.
I love it. Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. Could I ask 2 questions? Just if anyone's wondering, like, you've done 4 years, fantastic. Where are you now? Can I ask you revenue-wise, like top line, like maybe last year, or what are you going to do this year?
Yeah, so 2023, we'll expect to do somewhere around 3 million.
Wow.
Yeah, so this year...
How old are you, may I ask?
26. So we started the month doing about 150 each month. And obviously with Q4 added extra benefit there. But yeah, we'll expect to do somewhere around 3 million this year.
Nice. Honestly. So there's a lot in there that you just talked about. I think a couple of questions I'm going to ask. You were doing books.
Yeah.
You were obviously successful, but I'm going to ask a question. You talked about scale. You're now doing... This year alone, you'll definitely do over 7 figures, which is by where your run rate is, but obviously you can do multiple 7 figures by the way your growth. The question I want to ask you is just like, why not stay with books? Why go into OA? Why think about scale? Most people don't do this. Most people are like, hey man, I'm making money. I'm probably making a good living. Why go bigger?
Well, so the thing is, at the time, right, I had a full-time job, right, which was salaried. I think it was like 70, 80,000 a year, whatever it was. And so a couple dollars from a couple books isn't going to move the needle, right? That's one thing. But additionally, I was looking for a more on-demand model, something that I can replicate and scale at my leisure, right? With books, if I'm going out to 5 Goodwills, there's no indication, there's no definite number of conceptualizing how many books I'm going to find. I'm at the leisure of whatever is in front of me, right? So I can go to 10 Goodwills or wherever, any thrift stores, and maybe find 2 books, maybe find 200. You can't plan for that. You can't account for that. And you can't strategize around that. You can't systemize that, right? Because you're, again, at the leisure of what's in front of you. The cool thing about online arbitrage is that you have the entire internet at your disposal and you have more information. And so the benefit of online arbitrage is it's more on demand, right? I can source and sift through and consume and analyze data within minutes and hours of every single site that exists and use that and make those accurate, educated, efficient sourcing decisions from that. And so it's that on-demand nature that really was game-changing for me, right? Again, I can't go to a store and dictate how many books I'm going to find. However, with specific processes and efficiencies in place, I can spend 5, 10, 15,000 today if I really wanted to on several different OA sites. And it's that on-demand nature that I think was the shift, the mental shift from books to online arbitrage.
I think a question for you, and I'm saying this because of the audience, you can't guarantee the number of books you're going to find in the thrift stores, but I would also say that you can't guarantee the number of OA deals that you can find when you go online. But what I'm guessing you would probably say that you have a much higher likelihood of being able to find them online than you would, there's a higher chance of being able to get good deals online, because it's kind of like going to all the bookstores in the whole of America at the same time because it's digital and it's online. You can just literally jump between them. Whereas in person, you have to physically drive, which just makes it a lot more challenging.
Right.
That kind of be a good analogy?
Yeah, it's just so much more efficient, right? Because even if with retail arbitrage, still buying and selling name brand products, you have to deal with traffic. You have to deal with, again, stock issues. With the online arbitrage model, you can go bounce from site to site to site in a matter of seconds. But the really cool thing with online arbitrage is that we have the most powerful available insight, which is other intel into other people's storefronts, right? That's going to be the main driver to activity and to grow this business however big we want it, is because the biggest luxury we have as Amazon sellers is knowing what products are in other people's storefronts. Because again, if we can boil Amazon down to one single thesis, it's that one product leads to a second, right? If we find one product, the chances that leads to a second or third or fourth is extraordinarily high, right? Because when we're talking about sourcing, I kind of define it as looking in sort of cold areas versus warm areas. What I consider a cold area is if I'm looking at, call it Walmart.com, right? If I go to Walmart's website, right, I have their product data, right? But we can't qualify that product just based on Walmart's website. We always have to map it back to Amazon, right? Because if I'm on Walmart's website, the products on that website are going to fall into three different buckets. Products that are on Amazon, products that are on Amazon that don't sell well, and then products that are not on Amazon, right? So if I'm just on that website, it's hard to kind of distinguish and qualify that product because I always have to map it back to Amazon. However, if we start with Amazon's data and then map it back, we're front loading a lot of the qualification, right? Because we have eyes on the data, we can make our qualification in terms of what's the offer count, what's the competition, what's the buy box, how steady is that buy box, how steady is the sales rank, what's the velocity, what's the differentiation between all those things, how do those all relate? And so if we front load all of that analysis and our last objective is to now just map it back and see what we can buy it for at how much, well, that makes that much more efficient, right? And so with that being said, coupling that with the access into other people's storefronts, right? That fuels our fire, right? That's going to fuel our sourcing, because if we start with one profitable product, we now have 5, 10, 15, 20 other sellers that are sharing that same product, right? Assuming that one is profitable, the assumption is those 10, 15, 20 sellers have found that first profitable product. Their team has likely found other ones from potentially similar sources and similar products in similar categories and those sorts of things. And so with one product connecting us to 5, 10, 15 sellers who all probably have, 10, 15, 50, 70 products in their catalogs, immediately we have access to hundreds and hundreds of warmer products because they have that filter already built in. Filter as in someone's already found it at some specific price. Our main objective is, one, qualifying it, making sure it's something that we want to buy, and then just mapping it back and see if the buy cost makes sense at that point, right? And so using that methodology, it streamlines sourcing online so much more than simply just trying to scan some books.
I think when I started off this interview, I said, look, I love the way you think about things. And when we were talking when I was listening to you obviously talk in Miami Sellers Conference, I kind of noticed that in the way you talked. And the way I kind of think about it is you build mental models around high level how the business operates. And then you're going in and testing those kind of hypotheses, going like, well, if we start with Walmart's and go towards Amazon, like how many deals am I finding? And obviously you get a lot of like duds. Be like, well, what if I start with a supplier that I know, have a look at their products, and then I'll find one of their products and see what other suppliers are on them, and go, okay, then I'll reverse back from then. And you're like, well, statistically speaking, I just get more deals. So, and again, the process that we do is generally quite inefficient. Everyone's like, computers enough to solve this. Like, they're not as good as we think they are because there's inefficiency in the marketplace. But the way you look at that problem, I really like, and I like the way you talk about it. And I think that's a really important thing, because so many sellers jump into doing sourcing and don't really think about how does sourcing fundamentally work, what's the understanding behind it, and then go out there and test it. Like literally, like I'm going to spend all week doing one method, 1 week doing another method, what works, and what we're doing looking for edges. If you can get 10%, obviously you're a data guy. Wow, it's compound 10%, and you're on another level, and hence why you were doing a 7-figure business.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things there, right? And first and foremost, right, a lot of things that newer sellers get stuck on is they want results fast. But the thing about sourcing is a game of making an inefficient process a little bit more efficient, right? Just a little bit more efficient, because it's to be expected to have to go through potentially hundreds of products to find that next winner. However, the quicker we can say no to a product, the faster we get to that next yes, right? If we can qualify a product very quickly within seconds, and SellerAmp, a lot of these softwares allow us to do that, the quicker we say no to products, the next yes is that much quicker, maximizing our time sourcing, making us more money, making our time more valuable, right? And so I think that's the big differentiator between different sourcing levels, right? The difference between someone who is just starting out, between me sourcing, is my no's come instantly, whereas another person, they may take several minutes to get to that same decision. We're not doing anything different. We're arriving at the same conclusion. I just do it faster. And because I do it faster, I can get to that next yes a lot quicker, right? And the point about the discounts, I talk about this all the time in my content, right? Adding complexity adds moats to our products, instills more longevity, right? And so the more sort of, I call it manufacturing your margin, the more we can manufacture our margin, the bigger moat we have, the more we're successful, the more our products will last. And that's with discounted gift card codes, loop like the catch-alls where we can repeat discount codes, all those sorts of things, looking for those extra edges, adding that extra kind of 5, 10 margin point discount points on our products that many people may not be doing. All of a sudden takes a $30 product and now makes it 26 or 27. And that may be the difference between a 2% margin product and a 12%. We're going to say no to a 5% margin product, but maybe not a 13 if the velocity is there and all these sorts of things, right? And so looking for edges, adding complexity, and just creating moats around our products. That's why wholesale is an intriguing model, right? There's an intuitive moat around wholesale products because not everyone can open that same catalog. That's why the wholesale model is awesome.
It's interesting. The one thing which I kind of think about throughout all of that is, you said it, new sellers want results quickly. And I kind of think about, like, be grateful for the fact that it's hard, and the harder it becomes, the more profit there's going to be. You know, the less harder it becomes, there's more competition, the less profit there'll be. So be grateful for that. And I think you also talked about with wholesale. One question for you: you talked about earlier on, you had a job, you had books. You used the term, it wasn't going to move the needle. What is
wealth generation for me, right? Moving the needle is continuing to boost the net worth, continuing to add zeros and all those sorts of things. Move the needle is just continuing to move things forward. Whatever, and that's, for me, that's either twofold. Either opens up my time or adds more money, right? That's really what's good, because obviously opening up more time allows me to make more money, or allows me to spend time with friends or family or do those sorts of things. And so those are really the two indicators of needle movers for me. If something either makes me more money or opens up my time, those are really the binary natures of everything that I do and everything I'm interested in. Right? Because those two things, if I can boil it down to those two things, one or the other is always going to make a difference.
Yeah, you're optimizing for those two things.
Yep.
Fantastic. Hey, honestly, I really like it. And again, like I said, like I love the way you think about it. So, question for you: obviously, you've done 4 years now. You're 7 figures. You're very analytical in your approach. Like we talked about it a minute ago about new sellers coming in wanting quick wins. Like, on reflection, like, what advice do you have for new sellers who are like getting in the game? It's changed since you started, but like, what are your thoughts on it? Should they start with books? Should they go straight into OA? What are your thoughts?
I would just start with retail arbitrage or OA. I wouldn't necessarily waste time with books, just because there's so much more content available now than there was. For me back then, books were sort of a trust building thing, trust in the model, not necessarily myself or what I was doing, but trust in the model that it works, that it's legitimate, all those sorts of things. Now with Instagram, I have, like, if someone goes to my Instagram page or my YouTuber, obviously our Buy Box Bandits, right? There's years of documentation that this works. So you don't need to build that trust. It's there. It's evident. It's apparent. Everyone's doing it, right? And so I think to streamline the growth process, if someone really wants to enter into that aggressive growth stage, it's going to be starting with OA. Again, you don't have to go spend $20,000 on one single site tonight, but optimize yourself for the most efficient activity, the most efficient growth. And that's going to be within online arbitrage. And within that, right, as you get started, double down on the data part early. Double down on the Keepa, really develop the fluency of what's going on, right? And the way I kind of dictate the maturation of newer sellers is, it's that mental shift, the ideology shift from finding a reason to say yes to a product as opposed to looking for a reason to say no, right? And it may just seem like a slight mental shift, but it makes all the difference, right? Because as a newer seller, right, who's eager, who's ambitious, who wants to spend money, they may get too overwhelmed by one specific variable in the equation. Whether the buy box is really good right now, whether it's moving very fast, whether the price is good, whatever that variable is, sometimes they get over obsessed by one specific variable and then they hit buy. However, if you just shift that mental ideology just a bit, and force yourself to look for a reason to say no, right? You go through your checklist. What's the sales rank? What's the buy box? How many am I expected to sell per month? What's the profitability of each of those units? Then you kind of force yourself to understand the entire picture and how everything corresponds, right? Because I boil down every single purchasing decision as sort of like a four bucket equation, a 4 sort of pedestal equation: profitability, velocity, stability, and ease of purchase. Every single product decision boils down to those 3 factors. And if we think of it as sort of like a stool, is how I explain it, right? The stool is based off of those 4 legs: profitability, velocity, stability, ease of purchase, and they all interconnect. One product is not going to be perfect in everywhere. There's never going to be a flat stool. It's always going to be crooked in some direction. But if you start to understand how everything correlates and how different factors affect each other, well, then you can start to understand and really make those decisions more accurately, right? Not every product is going to be, you're the top of your line in terms of margin. Not everyone's going to bring back 20, 25%, 30% margin. However, if you learn to, okay, I'll give a little margin here, maybe I'll accept this at 14%, but the velocity is really good, well, then again, that's going to be better than something else. Or ease of purchase. If I know I can go and get this product on demand whenever I want, easily with no threat of cancels, well, then that's a positive variable for that product. That's why wholesale, again, is a good model, right? The stability. If something has been trending between 25 and 30 for 7 months, but the margin is not necessarily that great, but it's moving very fast, well, I know it's stable. I know it's probably going to continue that way. So I'm okay that I'm not making top dollar on this, but if I can move it fast, it's still gonna work for me. So those 4 factors are going to be the 4 buckets that dictate every single purchasing decision. The key is learning, again, how they all interact, how you expect them to interact, and how you're okay with kind of giving and taking with each one. How you want your stool to kind of sit in terms of lacking in one variable, having the other ones make up for that one. And that's really going to be the difference.
Wow, I love it. I just got to repeat. Number one, you said the model's been proven. I understand that, but I think it's a really important point. You've got to test and trust the model yourself. You've got to prove it yourself. Like, someone can tell you that it's okay to fly a plane, but until you actually do it, you're like, I think I'm going to die, and they're like, no, it's okay. And then number 2 is really focus, double down on understanding the data, and I think that's really true. And again, you talked about the 4 pillars: profit, velocity, stability, and ease of purchase. And I love your the stool analogy. I completely agree. I don't know if you've ever seen those like triangle diagrams where you're trying to optimize within that triangle, and obviously it's a square. And I think that's so true. But I think again, like there's a balance in it. You're never going to go one corner. It'll be a certain area within that. But the one thing I do love about what you said is start thinking about why should you buy it, not why shouldn't you. And definitely as new sellers, we're like, oh my god, this is amazing. So if I get that right, because I think the way I think about the whole equation is like, if it's not a hell yeah, it's a no, rather than we're saying like, oh, it's not that bad, I'll buy it anyway. Or did I get that wrong? So
you had it reversed, right? Typically, as newer sellers get into the game, they get overindulged by one specific variable, right? They're looking for a reason to kind of force themselves to buy something, right? I envision it like, those kids games where it's like you have the shape and you have to put it into the matching shape. And then as the babies, they try and force a circle into a triangle thing. Yeah. Well, that's how sourcing naturally is for a lot of as you grow, right? You're trying to force an action on a product. Whereas the alternative, and as you mature, it's just going to become more natural, is looking at the whole picture and looking for a reason to say no, right? It seems a little slight, but it makes a bunch of difference because then you start to analyze the entire thing. Okay, well, what's the trending been in the past 6 months? Has it been stable? Has it been persistent in terms of the velocity, the price? Well, what's the price at now? What's the offer count? How many am I expecting, given the competition, to claim each and every month? All these things play a role in the actual purchasing decision. And again, the more we can understand the entire cumulative of what the product, what the Keepa data is telling us, the more accurate our decisions then become.
No, I like that. Thank you. I love it. So for yourself, obviously some advice. Amazon sellers, 4 years, 7 figures now. Where are you going? Tell me about what's the future hold for you? Where are you going to be in a year's time?
I'm really just trying to build this up as high as possible, right? I think 8 figures is very feasible within the next year or two. 8 figure, because again, right, the business doesn't change, right? There's no difference between the difference between a business doing 200,000 a month and 20,000 a month isn't as drastic as you think. One business just spends a bit more, but they're looking at the same data, right? So I realistically think 10 figures is in the equation for the next couple of years. And then private label as well is probably in the near, not so near future, maybe like a end of like Q3, Q4 thing, maybe Q1 of the following year. But yeah, just keep scaling the business, keep optimizing, keep incorporating more brand accounts with wholesale and things like that. And then also incorporating some PL at some point. And then just continuing to grow other businesses, right? That's a big part of what we do, is taking other businesses who are, just getting started, but have that sort of confidence in the model, have the vision, know where they want to go, but don't necessarily know how to connect the two dots, right? Know how to streamline streamline the growth, and don't want to go through the trials and tribulations of the up and down. Just kind of want that clear cut. Tell me what I need to do. Tell me how to do it. Tell me what I need to know. Teach me, and then allow that business to grow on its own. I think that's a big piece too, is I just want to continue to grow other people's businesses who already know that they want to be doing it.
if anyone wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
Yeah, so all on Amazon, on Instagram, Twitter. I have a personal YouTube channel. It's my name here, just Gareth Garol. You could subscribe to my YouTube content, videos every Wednesday and Friday. That's my name in the picture here. But yeah, that's it.
Fantastic. If anyone wants to know, I will drop a link down below, so obviously you'll be able to see that and obviously access all those. So Gareth, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate, you've got a lot of knowledge, and I'd love to get you back on and possibly even like a year's time, see how you're getting on, talk about the wholesale side, talk about, should we say, where you're going with other businesses, your mindset around money and building, optimizing for that time and that equations. I think that's fascinating. And I just love also the way you're looking, you look at the equation, those 4 pillars of the stool. I think that was brilliant. So I just want to say thank you to you, and obviously anyone watching, obviously thank you for that as well, and obviously drop any comments down below if you like. But Gareth, thank you so much for your time today, and I really appreciate it.
Of course, yeah, thanks for having me.